Now, before we jump into the new bills in Salem, it's worth noting that just yesterday, opponents of ballot measure 114 filed a petition with the Oregon Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of the measure. Here's that petition. About a month ago, the Harney County Court's ruling against 114 was overturned by the Court of Appeals, who ruled it is constitutional. The final avenue in the state case is the Oregon Supreme Court, who will now decide whether or not to hear the case. Here's Tony Aiello, attorney for the plaintiffs who want 114 thrown out.
I think it's extremely likely that the Oregon Supreme Court takes the case. It hasn't decided a case of this level of consequence for the state in its history. The closest would be in 1984. So we're talking over 40 years now between the last statewide ban of an arm and this statewide ban.
But while 114 remains on hold, tied up in court, Democratic lawmakers in Salem are working on 3 gun control bills. One to lay the framework for enforcing Measure 114, and 2 others regarding gun sales.
In Central Oregon, our long tradition of firearm ownership is a part of our culture. For me and my daughters, guns are a part of our family heritage, part of how we connect as a family, passed down through generations for hunting, sport. I am a gun owner that also uses firearms for personal protection. At the same time, we know that gun violence, gun suicide, and gun accidents have torn our communities apart. In 2022, as I comforted grocery store workers and ensured that our community was safe after somebody opened fire in our Safeway, it was clear that we need to coexist and take a new approach.
That's Oregon State Senator Anthony Broadman, a Democrat from Bend, testifying last month in support of House Bill 3076. He's one of the chief sponsors of the bill. Now, the bill would lay the groundwork for a state licensing program for gun dealers. If it's approved, gun dealers would eventually have to be licensed by the State Department of Justice. Licenses would last 3 years, and the DOJ would have to do an annual inspection of their business and impose penalties for violations of the law. Supporters say there needs to be more oversight on gun dealers, that some of them are knowingly allowing guns to be bought for people who shouldn't have them. They call them straw purchases. The Alliance for a Safe Oregon is one of those supporters.
So an example being maybe somebody walks into a gun store with their girlfriend. They're not allowed to buy a firearm. It's pretty clear they're the one interested in the gun. They're asking all the questions, and the girlfriend purchases the gun. Then later, law enforcement finds that gun at the scene of a crime, and it's been used in multiple shootings across our city. Another example is somebody walks into a gun store in Klamath Falls. They buy 30 firearms with cash, and they traffic those guns actually to Mexico or Central or South America. And these are both examples of purchases that gun dealers can actually stop and prevent guns from ending up in our communities. But right now, there's a problem where they're not being held accountable for basic ethical, business standards or safety standards.
Right now, gun dealers only need a federal firearms license, an FFL, from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Opponents of the bill say another layer of bureaucracy is overkill. House Republicans sent us a statement that says in part that House Bill 3076 adds additional unnecessary oversight to an industry that already follows extensive federal regulations, including background checks, ATF licensing, and strict compliance laws. Representative Greg Smith, who represents counties in Eastern Oregon, says it's not going to sit well with people out there.
I represent a district where my folks are just saying, gosh, enough is enough. Enough is enough. How much more are we going to do to us? Our folks in Eastern Oregon are law-abiding citizens. Our small business owners are law-abiding citizens. And the notion that we're going to put, as described in Section 6, those additional regulations on these gun shops is just going to be a huge, expensive burden that many of them just can't afford. And so again, they just say, how much more are we going to do?
House Bill 3076 passed out of committee last week. And if you guessed that it passed along party lines, you would be correct. The same goes for the two other gun bills. Senate Bill 243 would impose a 72-hour waiting period on gun purchases. It would also ban rapid fire activators, things like bump stocks that are attached to guns and enable them to fire more like automatic weapons. And it would allow local government to adopt policies banning guns from public buildings. Supporters say it would help stop suicides and mass shootings. Many Republicans simply don't see it that way. The last bill, House Bill 3075, sets up the enforcement of Measure 114, basically getting ready for if the measure clears all of its current legal hurdles. It lays out how and where you get your permit to purchase a gun and why you could be denied. You'll also have to show that you did a safety training course. That was part of Measure 114. So was a ban on large capacity magazines, anything that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition.